and welcome to episode number 153 of the Lines Podcast. My name is Matt Brown, joined each and every week by Brett Collson and Brad Allen. We run down all of the big action for the week. We are down to 4 teams in the NFL. It is the final 2 games before the Super Bowl. I'm starting to get a little bit of pre-depression here. It's a long season every year, but it gets to this point, and I start to wonder what the hell I'm going to do with my Sundays whenever everything goes away for us here. But we're going to run through these things top to bottom every which way for you. But before we get going, go ahead and follow Brad on the Twitter machine at Brad Allen NFL. Follow Brett at Brett Collson. If you want to follow me, at Matt Brown M2. And if you are not watching this on YouTube, if you're listening to this in podcast form, head over to the YouTube page and go ahead and that is YouTube/PlayPicks. Hit that subscribe button and you'll get all of our content here. Got a good NBA content, golf content. We're going to have it all. So be sure and take advantage of that as well. Fellas, we'll hit the games. We'll kind of work in some of the stuff from last week into these game previews as opposed to kind of going back and really nitpicking those, because everybody, as we sit right now, is really wondering how they want to go about betting both of these games. I mean, listen, we have 2 games, close spreads. I think there's a valid argument for both sides of the ball in both of these games. As we are sitting right now, we'll kick things off with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Green Bay Packers. This game is sitting 3.5, depending on where you get it, 51.5, 52 on the total. FanDuel PointsBet sitting at 3, BetMGM, DraftKings sitting at 3.5. 51.5 is pretty much what you're getting across the board, except over at FanDuel, where you are looking at 52 on the total. Of course, the Bucs get here by getting by the Saints. A very key play we were talking about before we went on air here. Very key play in that game. Jared Cook, the Saints are up 7. They're driving. He catches the ball in the middle, fumbles, and it was game over from there. The Saints never could recover. I don't believe in momentum. I think that is something that coaches and ex-players love to talk about. But I'll tell you something. If there was such thing as momentum, the momentum was definitely changed on that fumble right there, because the Saints just were clueless after that, and the Bucs played pretty efficiently and were able to get the win in that game. The Packers, of course, getting here pretty easily, again, on another just unbelievably awesome performance by Aaron Rodgers with a banged up Jared Cook. Also, we were correct, guys, in us assuming that Aaron Donald was still hurt. I mean, that was one of the very big things in this as well. Only played about half the snaps in the game. Even when he was out there, he was ineffective. So guy misses a whole half of football in a very important win-or-go-home game and then doesn't show up on the injury report the next week. Brad, you were talking about even in the Saints game, Brees's wife comes out and says things about him being injured all year. So these injury reports are getting some shenanigans here towards the end of the year as well. But Brad, let's kick things off here. Okay. Bucs 3.5, depending where you get it. 51.5 seems to be the consensus on the total here. First and foremost, where do you think is the biggest mismatch in this game as far as, one team's unit, one team's whatever it might be has an extremely big advantage over the other?
The biggest mismatch? Possibly just Aaron Rodgers against the Bucs defense. I mean, it might sound a bit silly given they held him to his by far the worst performance of the season in week 6 when they played 10 points, I think all in the first quarter, and then they just shut him out after that. But you go back and look at that, and I think there's plenty of excuses to be made that was kind of a freak thing. So just with his weapons, it was Devontae Adams' first game back from a hamstring injury. So there's a chance he wasn't quite fresh, quite ready to go, quite game fit. There was no Alan Lazard as the second option, so suddenly that's MVS as your second option, and he's just not that reliable. And then they spoke about after the game that they just had no adjustments for the blitz. Like, I don't know why you would go into a game against Todd Bowles with no adjustment for the blitz, but that was the case. And then during the game, the left tackle Bakhtiari got injured. The right tackle went out somewhere, I think, early-ish in the game as well. And then what happened is they threw loads of blitzes at him, and the offensive line just didn't pick it up. Well, whether they confused Rodgers or this offensive line that was, perhaps a little bit makeshift, they confused them, and as I said, they didn't have any adjustments for what to do with that. And I think all of that is different this time round. So, Rodgers has been the best QB against the blitz since 2006. He's been third best against the blitz this year. So I think if they try that again, I think they'll get toasted this time round. I would say that's the biggest mismatch.
So we do have, in both of these games, Brett, we do have, as Brad mentioned, we do have week 6 games against all these teams. So we have something to look back on. If you go back and you look at that week 6 game, Aaron Rodgers, 16 of 35, 160 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions, sacked 4 times, hit 13 times. He was blitzed on 21 of his dropbacks. And so, you look at that, and it was basically, if you look at just raw statistical numbers, all 4 of the quarterbacks, like in the previous game, basically had their worst statistical game of the season. So all when you look back on these games, you're basically getting kind of the worst of all of these quarterbacks. And, from a Brady standpoint, it was mainly because the game was just in hand so incredibly early. Brady, 17 of 27, 166 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He was not sacked at all in the game. He was only hit 4 times in the game. Again, didn't really have to do a ton because this game got out of hand fairly early. The Packers even waved the white flag in the fourth quarter in this game as well. If you go back, and I don't know if you remember this game or if you've rewatched this game or you've just studied the box score, which kind of refreshed your memory, is there anything that you are taking from the first matchup between these two teams into your handicapping for this game?
Not really. It was so long ago. And Tampa Bay has really improved offensively since then, which doesn't bode well, I guess, if you're baking that first matchup into your handicapping this week. But I'm not really taking a whole lot from that matchup. It was one game and it was months ago. So not really. I'm more looking at what these two teams are over the past several weeks and coming into this week.
Brad, as far as that first game goes, I guess the only thing that did stand out to me, and you were talking about that they said afterwards not being able to adjust to the blitz, is the fact that Aaron Rodgers, 2 picks, obviously worst game of the year for that, sacked 4 times. I think that is at least minimally telling. Hit 13 times in that game, blitzed on 21 of his dropbacks. In that, you have to assume 2 different things here. One, that the Bucs are going to try to do at least a lot of the same, where they were able to make the surefire MVP have his by far worst game of the season. And then the other assumption would be that the Packers now have a plan in place for, okay, if they do blitz us as much as we think they are, this is how we're going to counter this.
Yeah, I definitely think they will. And as I said, it was just a weird anomaly that game. Rodgers against the blitz by PFF grade, 86.9, third best in the league, 5th best passer rating when they send extra rushers. So, as I say, I really do think it was just a one-off, banged up weapons, banged up offensive line, and not a good enough plan. And it's just different this time around. And also, it's probably worth mentioning that the Bucs defense isn't who they were at the start of the year. So through the first 8 weeks of the year, they were a top 5 unit in DVOA. And now I'm just looking at since week 10. So just to try and get the last 8 games or so, they're down in, where are they? 21st in drop back EPA allowed, excluding garbage time. So they've fallen off a bit of a cliff. And I don't necessarily know why that is. I don't know if some of that is Vita Vea, who probably won't play from what I can make out. Obviously, he's got a chance to play, but if he will, he's going to be banged up, or he's going to be limited at least because he's not played since week 5.
Devin White missed 2 games because of COVID. There's that as well in there.
Yeah. So, I'm not saying they're the 21st best defense in the league, but I don't think they're a top 5 unit. I think they're kind of middle of the pack. And they're exploitable by the right team. And let's remember 2 weeks ago that Taylor Heineke went up and down the field on them. Last week, Drew Brees, his leading receiver, he's got a high ankle sprain. He's got surgery on his labrum and his ankle. Brees has come out, said he had plantar fascia in his foot. He had a torn labrum as well, or torn rotator cuff. So that wasn't an offense that should have scared anyone. We didn't know how banged up they were. That was, as we spoke about earlier, that wasn't on the injury report. But yeah, so I really don't think we should be overrating Tampa Bay's defense based on what they've done recently. So I think they're middle of the pack, and I don't think they're going to have this kind of blitz edge that they had in the first game, and they are going up against the best offense in the league, which is fully fit and firing. The one concern perhaps is Shaq Barrett off the edge. He's got the second most pressures in the league behind Aaron Donald for Tampa, and they can line him up against the backup left tackle Billy Turner. But even he played well last week. I think he was the highest graded lineman on the team last week. So I don't really see a way for Tampa to slow them down. So yeah, I like Green Bay to score some points.
Brett, so you talked about this Bucs offense being a different animal since this first meeting, and specifically since the bye. They had, if you remember, they had one of the very late season byes this year. They were one of the last teams, if not the last team, to get a bye. And so since that bye week for the Bucs, they're averaging 34.8 points per game. Brady completing 65% of his passes, 9.2 yards per attempt. He's got a 16-1 touchdown to interception ratio. I think a direct line you can draw to this is one, listen, at the end of the day, if you get a week off whenever you're, Brady's age, and some of these other guys are vets as well. Mike Evans isn't the epitome of health, and Chris Godwin was dealing with pins in his finger and all the stuff like that. So you get a week off to kind of do whatever. But then also, I think you can draw a line to getting an extra week to getting Antonio Brown kind of situated in this offense as well. So what do you see here from a matchup perspective on the Bucs offense versus the Packers defense?
I agree with Brad. I agree with Brad that Green Bay is going to be able to score, but I think Tampa Bay is going to be able to score a lot of points too, and that's why the total is a little confusing to me, which we'll talk about in a little bit. As far as being able to exploit this Green Bay defense, it's right there. I mean, it's taking advantage of this pass funnel of the Green Bay. I mean, we saw Jair Alexander shadow Mike Evans on 67 or 76% of plays in the first meeting. If we expect that to happen, we're going to see Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown, if he plays, running wild against these other corners for the Packers, and they're not good. Kevin King and Chandon Sullivan are not good corners. So I think you're going to be able to see Tom Brady take advantage with Godwin and even Scotty Miller or Tyler Johnson. These guys have become Brady guys too. So you've got a quarterback here, Brady, who's so good at spotting these opportunities against bad cornerbacks. And I think the snow might actually help them too in this game. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I do see a lot of opportunity here for points in this game, and from both sides. And I think the Tampa Bay's offense is not being given the credit it deserves in this spot this week.
Brad, I'm going to give you the same question here. You take a look at this Bucs defense, and at this Packers defense, and listen. So I gave you the statistics of the Bucs since their bye week, but since week 13, this Packers defense actually 8th in yards per attempt against, 5th in passer rating against, their 2nd in coverage grade against since week 13. But you dig a little bit deeper, and you see who they've faced along the way. Mitch Trubisky, Teddy Bridgewater, Matthew Stafford had to leave the game. They got Chase Daniel. It was the Carson Wentz game where Jalen Hurts came in that game. They got, the banged up Jared Goff last week as well. So I'm not taking anything away from this defense. I'm not saying that they haven't gotten better over the last half of the season here, but you do kind of look at who they've faced, and it's certainly not Tom Brady and this crew here. And the other part about Jair Alexander I think is interesting is they were using him in shadow coverage all the way through week 9 of the season. And then since then, for whatever reason, and maybe this was when they started to turn it around at least a little bit in the secondary, he just started playing exclusively on the left side. He doesn't shadow anymore. And so maybe they just figured something out on the defensive side of the ball with that they're just a little bit more efficient if he just plays the side as opposed to chasing a receiver all around. So what do you see here when you match up this Bucs offense against this Packers defense?
Yeah, much the same. I think I wonder if the reason this total is a bit low is because of those improved metrics that you just went through. But I think you also went through the reason they are so low is that they've just faced a very easy schedule. And I was surprised by how well Goff moved the ball last week.
Mm-hmm.
He had a banged up thumb. He was missing his slot receiver. He had a banged up left tackle. He was under a lot of pressure as well. And they still went up and down the field relatively well, or better than I expected at least. And I think this is a completely different proposition. Brady's just a much better quarterback, used to this spot. The offensive line, I think, is close to elite. The right tackle Tristan Wirfs is already one of the best tackles in the league. They're strong everywhere. They've got all pros on that line, and they've got the receivers as well. So. Yeah, they'll also be able to run the ball as well. That's the weakness of the Green Bay defense as well, the relative weakness compared to their pass defense. And we know the Bucs like to run the ball on first and second down. They did it too much last week against New Orleans and got away with it. But this Green Bay defensive line is not the Saints defensive line. It's not even close. So, if they're ripping off 5 yards, 6 yards on first down, and then they go to the play action, they start going down the seams to Godwin, to Gronk, to Brait. I can see them having a lot of success. I would say the one place where they might get in trouble is if they get behind. One thing I might want to mention later is the Packers' script in the first quarter. But if they do get down and they have to move away from the run and they get into, say, 3rd and 10, the Packers can put some 4 good pass rushers on the field. They can put the Smith brothers, Kenny Clark in the middle, Rashawn Gary, and they can come after you. And then there is a weakness at right guard because they're on a backup there. So that's probably when Green Bay has an edge, which it's quite a small set of plays where that might be the case, but I think that is probably going to happen 5 times. And if they can get pressure up the middle over that right guard spot, Brady's not going to like that. So so I would say if they can run the ball, which I think they'll be able to, I think they will have success. But there is also a game script where they do get behind and are forced to pass a lot. And Green Bay are going to win their share of matchups and get a few sacks. But generally, I think the Bucs are going to move the ball well.
What are the other kind of things when I dug into this first meeting of this game, which I saw, it was actually one of Gronk's best games of the year. Brady only threw for 166 yards, but 78 of those went to Gronk, which is just a little bit odd. He hasn't really been targeted over the second half of the season really at all. And so I went back and rewatched this game, and you go to look because the Green Bay, if you look at the advanced stats, have actually been pretty good against tight ends. So I'm like, why the hell did Gronk kind of have this big day? And really the majority of the chunk yardage he was lined up on the outside against a corner. So like they had lined Gronk up on the outside going up against a corner instead of kind of going over the middle. And they were just taking advantage of him being a big Galufadunk, against these cornerbacks and throw it up into the corner. He was able to catch a touchdown against a corner as well. And so I don't think that's going to work this time around either. So I can't really draw a ton from the first meeting from this one, other than the fact that I think we're going to see a ton of blitzing from the Bucs, at least early, and see if it works again like it did the first time. Again, they sacked Rodgers 4 times. They hit him 13 different times. Does it work this time around? And then we're going to have to figure out if there's going to be, if it doesn't, what are going to be the adjustments. We understand that Davante Adams is one of the most versatile receivers in all of the NFL. We saw it last week. They decided, okay, we'll just run these little short routes with him. He catches 9 of 10 targets. He never goes further than like 7 yards down the field, right? I mean, they understand how to manufacture touches for him against the coverage and against whatever the defenses are giving him. And so, Brett, one of the matchups here is likely to be Davante Adams versus Carlton Davis. If you look at Carlton Davis, not a guy that gets mentioned in the same breath as Jair Alexander, but he shadowed Michael Thomas 3 different times this year, held Michael Thomas to 2 horrible games, 1 very below average game in the first meeting. Again, not that we can draw a ton from that, but Adams got 10 targets, only caught 6 of them for 61 yards in a lot of shadow coverage by Carlton Davis in that first game as well. He's allowing just a 56% catch rate on the season. And so you start to wonder if Davis can have some success. I'm saying some success. He's not going to shut down Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers. That's not going to happen. But if he can have some success and Aaron Rodgers does have to go to these second and third receivers, you do wonder, you do wonder, okay, are we really going to see kind of this offense that we've seen all year long? We saw Allen Lazard drop a touchdown pass last week. We've seen MVS drop. You and I, as DFS players as well, has watched MVS drop 7,000 passes over the course of his career as well. So even if they can slow down Davante Adams with a Carlton Davis or maybe some sort of other kind of double team type situation, do you expect this Packers offense to just continue to still roll?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? That was my question last week. My only concern really last week was, can these secondary playmakers for the Packers step up if Jalen Ramsey is able to shut down Davante Adams? And I mean, they had their moments of greatness, and then we saw moments where these they are who we thought they were. I mean, they're not great players, so it is a concern if Davis is able to do his job and at least contain Davante Adams, and then Rodgers has to rely on these just MVS and Tanyan it's definitely a concern. But there's also a big difference between Slant Boy, as Carlton Davis calls Michael Thomas, and Davante Adams. I'm fully convinced now that Davante Adams is a far better receiver than Michael Thomas. So I'm not all that worried about that matchup, really. I think Davante Adams is going to get his, and I don't see any reason why Rodgers wouldn't look his way up as often as possible.
All right, Brad, let's get into this thing here. We've kind of talked around some angles here as to how, both teams might be able to fare. We're sitting, as we said, at a 3.5, depending on where you get it, 51.5 on our total. How do you see this thing playing out? What bets have you made? What bets are you looking at? Or what leans do you have?
So I have bet 2 in this one. So I went with first half Green Bay -1.5. And again, so I kind of spoke about the reasons I think Green Bay should have their success. But then if you look at the scripted plays, first 15 plays, Green Bay is number 1 in the NFL in passing EPA on those scripted plays. And especially if Todd Bowles comes out blitzing again, I very much like the Packers to do what they've done all year long and score on the opening drive or two. Even in that first matchup where they got blown out 38-10, they were up 10-0. Yeah, the script is so good, and they've just done it every single week. So I like them to do that again, and it's -1.5 currently, and also had some over. Over 51.5 would still play. Probably wouldn't play at 52. Just the forecast currently is a little bit uncertain. There's still I think around a 30% chance of snow from what I can see. And yeah, again, that we were spoken about the reasons both offenses should have success. Full game spread, we definitely lean with the Packers -3. I think one thing, just kind of in the kind of a meta wider look, is that Tampa Bay are on their third straight road game. They've had 4 competitive games now because they wanted to beat the Falcons in week 17, whereas Green Bay had the week off. They're very well rested. So they're going to have a big rest advantage. They've got home field. They've got fans in there. Rodgers spoke last week about just how much energy that gave them, how good it was to have them back. And then I think they've got better coaches as well. Arians loves the early down run. He's conservative on fourth down. Bowles, he plays the most 8-men box in the league. Stop the Packers run game, fine, but you need to stop Rodgers, and that's not what they've always done this year. So I think all these kind of little intangible edges go towards the Packers, and I think they're the better team anyway. They've got the better offense, and I don't think the defense is that far apart. So Packers first half, Packers on the side if you want to go that way, and over 51.5.
Yeah, so what we're looking at here is high 20s. There is going to be at least some level of snow. Is that actually during the game or before the game? We'll figure that out. But it looks like the latest models have between 1 and 3 inches of snow up there in Lambeau. Brett, I am less concerned maybe than I've ever been for a couple of different reasons. One, you take a look, and the reason I ever even consider these super cold weather games anyway is what's the quarterback situation? Is it either a warm weather team or a dome weather team? But we're getting Brady, who has played in these conditions more than just about anybody. It's obviously really, really cold in New England. He's played in, I think it's 70 different games below 30 degrees or something like that, or below 35 degrees. So this is nothing that he is going to be concerned with. And so what I'm actually hoping for, and to play into Brad, because I also like the over in this game, I think we're looking at a mid-50s at minimum game here, is that the television comes on, people see the snow on the field, and they start panicking, and this number goes down, and I hope we get an even more favorable number because people overreact to stuff like that. So that's actually kind of one of the angles I am playing in this thing. Was I'm going to try and benefit off of people's overreactions to what the TV talks about it. Because the broadcasters, it's frigid here. Look at the snow on the field, whatever. Well, you know what they're going to do whenever they're hyping up this game. And so hopefully we can get a bunch of casual bettors coming in and hitting the under and give us a chance to come in on the over.
Yeah. And what's your magic number with totals?
Yeah, 51.
51.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do you think we'll get to 51?
I got it at 51, actually. This was at 50 and a half. This was at 50 and a half just 24 hours ago. And so I think that some of the people realize, like, okay, doesn't really matter here. Let's go ahead and bet the over. This is going to be, but I do believe public is, and we know, if there's anything we know, the money has not come in yet from the public. I actually had Johnny Avello on a show that I do last night. Johnny said they have gotten 5% of the handle that they are going to get on these two games as of last night. So the money is still yet to come in, specifically the public money. So I'm betting on this thing dropping down once people see the cold and the snow.
So I should probably wait then, because I love the over in this game. This is my favorite play of the entire week. Just looking at these two offenses, both top 3 in the league in offense DVOA, number 1 in the NFL in points per play versus number 2, both top 5 in the NFL in explosive passes. Two teams that have been able to score effectively and quickly this season. So why is this total only 51.5? It could get lower when the average total for every game this year was just short of 50. And why is this total 51.5 when the total for this game between these two teams in week 6 closed at 54.5, when at the time this Tampa offense wasn't rolling like it did in the second half of the season? Is it the weather? I would think that's got to be part of it, but no, go ahead.
I was going to say it could be. So they both played like dead nut under teams last week. Like both the Rams and the Saints, they run the ball. Like the top 5 rates in the NFL. Both got good defenses and both got quarterbacks who were injured and didn't throw downfield. And they still both scored 50 points in those games. So now you put literally the best two offenses in the league together with two average defenses. And I agree with you.
Yeah, I don't understand it. I mean, in like the fear of Brady playing in the snow, that's a fallacy that I think we can definitely take advantage of here. Snow, if anything, gives the advantage to the offense and the receivers in the passing game. Defensive backs on slick surfaces aren't able to react as they would on our regular fields. And if anybody can take advantage of that, is Tom Brady. He's played in these games for 20 plus years, going back to college. So I love the over in this game with these two quarterbacks against, especially Rodgers against a very high variance Tampa defense that's got the best of him the first time around. But he's had this one circled, and he's studied this. He's studied this game a lot, and I think he's going to be ready. So 51.5 seems really low to me.
I love it that we're all on the same page. Like my angle on this as well is also there's going to be points. I understand that if you look at the complete season long metrics on this Bucs defense, that it looks pretty good, but this is just this Packers team, Aaron Rodgers, the way they've been going, LaFleur, the way things have been going with him and play calling. So it's a different animal. They're going to score. The Bucs are going to score as well. The only other play that I have in this one, I did go ahead and take when this number got to 4. I went ahead and y'all know me, if they're going to give me like these big numbers that I can make into teasers, or whatever. So I took the Bucs up to 10 in a teaser with the Bills, and we'll talk about that game here in just a second. But the other thing I have is Lenny. I got Lenny over 41.5 rushing yards. Ronald Jones came out of that game last week banged up. He's not the same. I expect Leonard Fournette. Leonard Fournette was getting 3-1 on the snaps anyway. Got 2-1 on touches as it was. So if Jones comes in just even a little banged up, then Leonard Fournette's going to get the majority of the carries there. We're only trying to get 42 yards out of this guy against a Packers defense that runs a ton of dime, right? So you can get running lanes here and there that Leonard Fournette should be able to take advantage of. So I only need 42 yards, Brad. So give me 42 yards on Leonard Fournette.
Yep, playoff Lenny's ready to go.
Yes, playoff Lenny ready to go. All right, let's talk about the second game on Sunday. It is the Bills and the Chiefs. We are sitting at 3 across the board in favor of the Chiefs. 53.5, 54 is your total. If you want 53.5, it's at FanDuel. You want 54, DraftKings points bet. You can find the 53.5 at BetMGM as well. The Bills get here in, let's call it what it was, a pretty tough game where Josh Allen, I think, was less efficient than we've seen all year. But the winds were much higher than people let on to us. It was supposed to be kind of mild winds, but you could see the goalpost kind of swaying in that game. And anytime that you have, the wins in that type of level with a pass heavy team like the Bills, there's going to be some drop off in production. So, still able to get the win, not really going to hold a ton against them in that one. Of course, the Chiefs, we know the story there. Patrick Mahomes leaves with the concussion. They convert a huge, it was 3rd and 14. They get 13 rushing yards by Chad Henne, take the 4th and 1 and go ahead and convert the 4th and 1, which gets them to, I'm convinced that if the Browns get the ball back right there, they were going to win the game, that the Chiefs were going home. Brett, I know you were really rooting for the Browns to get the ball back so that you would be facing the Browns this week in a home game as opposed to a road game against the Chiefs. This number, guys, is assuming that Patrick Mahomes is going to play. We saw some books open this as Bills as favorites because of the question mark around Patrick Mahomes, and then everyone just bet it as if Patrick Mahomes was going to play. Got this thing all the way to 3.5 at one point. It is still sitting at 3 across the board right now. That same conversation I had with Johnny Avello, where he told me that only 5% of the money has come in so far this week, also told me, should Patrick Mahomes get ruled out, that this would move to Bills -4. So we would see a 7-point swing here over at their shop anyway, as far as should Patrick Mahomes get ruled out. Brett, we're going to assume Mahomes is playing. He's been out there practicing. Practice with a helmet on Thursday. I mean, they can't, it's not up to the Chiefs. It's not up to Patrick Mahomes. It's up to a third party. So they can't rule him in, but all signs point to him being in. So we're just going to take this handicap as if Patrick Mahomes is going to play. We can throw in some caveats at the end if for whatever he gets miraculously ruled out or whatever. So we'll go with this as if he is going to play. You look at the game you look at this first matchup between these two teams, and I'm sure this is your team, so I'm sure you remember it very well. Josh Allen's worst game of the season, just like we got Aaron Rodgers' worst game of the season. Josh Allen goes 14-27, 122 yards. Now he did add in 42 rush yards on the ground, but obviously, this guy's throwing in the upper 280s in just about every single game this year. Goes for 122 here against the Chiefs. He was under pressure on 17 of his 31 dropbacks. I think that is the very big difference in this game compared to a lot of the other ones. But, you can tell us better than anybody. A lot has changed for this Bills team since that game, and a lot has changed, I think, even on the Chiefs side as well.
Yeah, definitely. And this was such a weird game. The Chiefs game planned so well for this one. They took advantage of the injuries and the weaknesses on this Bills defense and just rammed CEH down their throats. I think 26 times, and completely took the air out of the Bills offense right from the get-go.
I should mention also it was in a huge downpour as well.
Yeah.
Like it was like I know we never use this word unless we're talking about rain, but it was torrential rain that was coming down. Like nothing else is torrential in life other than rain, but the torrential rain was coming down in that game as well. So something else that just made that game weird.
Yeah, and it was just a coaching masterpiece by Reed. I mean, that's really what it came down to. And it was a good example of, we talk about it a lot, just there's so many different ways the Chiefs can beat you, and they showed it. This was the best example of the season. They didn't even really use Patrick Mahomes at all. They just exploited the Bills the Bills' inefficiencies on defense by running the football. And it was, I mean, that game was a roll show. Was it 466 yards to 220? I mean, the game was not as close as the final score showed. So, what can you take away from that? I think for me, mostly just game planning, how Reed approached that game far better than the Bills did. That for me, and that's something I'm taking into this game as well too, is coaching. As good as McDermott and Dable have been this year, as good as Leslie Frazier game plan for the game last week on defense, this is still Andy Reid in an AFC championship game where he's been before. And that to me is a huge advantage. I think the biggest takeaway from that first game is just how good Reid game plan for the Bills.
Brad, I'm going to, on the flip side of that, I actually think that the Bills probably should employ the same strategy here and see if it just works a little bit better. I mean, yes, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 26 carries, 161 yards. But because of the way that the Bills went about this, they had 6 or fewer guys in the box on 64% of the plays in that game. They're daring you to run the ball. They did, because the Chiefs then get out of what they do best, which is obviously utilizing Mahomes and Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. The Chiefs ran the ball 58% of the time on first and second down in that game, which, as we know, running the ball on early downs, especially when you're Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill, is not the most efficient way to go about the offense. Now, the Bills were without Matt Milano in that game. They were not able to stop the rush game. And if you let the other team run and they can get 7 yards to carry every time, well, then it's the strategy is not going to work out. But I think that if you're the Bills, at least early in this game, I think you try to stick to that same deal. If you can keep Patrick Mahomes from looking at Tyreek Hill and keep him from looking at Mahomes at Kelce, and if Andy Reid is going to kind of fall for it in air quotes here and just run it into the line a ton, I would at least, if I'm the Bills, go about it that way yet again.
Yes, I exactly agree, and I think they will do it again. They held them to 26 points, and I think everyone would agree to beat the Chiefs, you have to score 30. Allen played badly, but I don't think it was a bad defensive game plan. What was weird about that game is that they only had, I think it was four defensive tackles active. I remember there was late, because it was a Tuesday night, wasn't it? Yeah. Or Monday afternoon. It was a weird game time, and they late scratched 2 of their defensive tackles who normally start, and then they came out with this game plan where you need some bodies up front. You can leave 6 in the box, but you still need some heavy men up front. So I thought that was very strange. So you would assume that I think they will do the same again, but they should have better success stopping the run. I don't think they're going to give up another 250 yards or whatever it was. And I think it's correct that the way to play Mahomes is 2 deep and no blitzing. So you mentioned that was the way they played it, but it was the first time that a team hasn't blitzed at all since at least 2016, which is as far back as next gen stats go. And then they only played 4 snaps of man coverage as well. So it wasn't just we're gonna play zone, 2 deep zone. That's all we're gonna play, which you would think they'll mix up a little bit more just to confuse him. So Mahomes this year against single high safety coverage, first in the NFL in EPA per play. Against 2 deep safeties, he's 15th in the NFL in EPA per play. Against blitzes, first in the NFL EPA per play. Against non-blitzes, 9th in the NFL in EPA per play. So I think the game plan is correct. I think 2 deep safeties play lots of zone and make them beat you that way. So I think we get more of that. It's also worth noting, along with the defensive tackles that the Bills didn't have. They didn't have Matt Milano, who's, he's a key linebacker. He's very good in coverage as well. He's good against the run. He'll be back. So yeah, I do think the Bills will have better success stopping them this time around.
So, Brett, when we take a look at this, I mean, if unlike the first game where it's just a whole bunch of kind of strengths on strengths, right? I mean, we're kind of looking like, okay, something's got to give here, strength on strength on strength on strength. Well, there are some, when we kind of look at the different weaknesses of these teams, there is kind of a strength on weakness deal here, and it's just not something that we really look at a ton. And that's the fact that, look, the Bills just don't run the ball very much, but when they do run, they've actually been fairly efficient. I mean, Singletary averages 4.5 yards a carry on the season, and there have been times this year where the Bills have looked really competent and really good running the ball. We understand that Kansas City has the 31st ranked rush defense DVOA. Pro Football Focus kind of agrees here, has them down at 23rd rush defense in the NFL. Do you think that, a team that really and truly last week didn't run an actual true run play until into the second quarter, do you think they can actually get to a point where they say, okay, look, if your obvious weakness is the run defense and we're pretty okay at it when we actually commit to doing that, do you think we'll see that? Or do you think this is McDermott and Dable just saying, you know what, look, we're a passing team. We're going to do what we do come hell or high water?
Yeah, I don't see this being a Devin Singletary game. I just don't. That's just not how this Bills Steve. I mean, look, maybe they've metagamed this the entire season. All of a sudden, they just start cramming Devin Singletary into the line, 20 plus times. I don't see it here. This offense has been so successful. The play action, it's just hilarious. They just run so much play action, but never run the football. But it always works. So, I mean, I can't see them getting away from that in this spot. They know, like you said, they have to score points in this game. They're not going to do that by running the football with Devin Singletary.
Brad, everyone's talking about the concussion on for the Chiefs and with Patrick Mahomes. And I'm actually more worried about the fact that I saw him hobbling around out there with his foot injury, like all over the field. And, everyone's like, yeah, I mean, the concussion's the only thing that's going to keep him out of the game if they don't rule him in the game. But I'm more worried about the foot thing going on with Patrick Mahomes, because if you don't have, 100% Patrick Mahomes doing all of these things that Patrick Mahomes does, that is a huge, huge, huge downgrade to this Chiefs offense. I mean, a lot of this stuff, we remember, there's a lot of the stuff that he does inside the pocket, but really the reason this offense is so successful is Patrick Mahomes extending plays, the kind of, backyard football plays that end up working out where he's scrambling, he's outside of the pocket, he fakes like he's going to run, he ends up hucking the ball 40 yards down the field to some receiver that saw he's scrambling and stuff. So, a lot of this offense is kind of predicated on him being mobile and him being able to feel pressure and get out of there and create plays and extend plays. And so I have not heard a ton of people talking about the foot. Everyone's talking about the concussion. And I'm like, guys, this is a foot injury for a dude that needs to be mobile. This is what we should be focusing on.
Yeah, they said on the broadcast last week, Mahomes, I think, leads the entire NFL in first down conversions on third and long, or first down runs on third and long. And it's not just the runs, as you said, he can get out of the pocket and chuck deep to Tyreek. I thought that would be a good way to get against the Chiefs. But the Twitter account, I think yesterday, released a photo of Mahomes in practice, I think rolling out to his left, just running along perfectly fine and throwing a dart. So he looks fine to me, essentially, and obviously he's not numbed up there. And if there is an issue, you would assume on Sunday he's going to be shot full of all the Toradol in Kansas City. Right. So I did think it was going to be an issue, but looking at that, a snapshot, but the way he was moving suggested it's not that bad. And so I'm kind of assuming he's 95 to 100%.
Has anybody on this podcast had turf toe before?
I have not. I have not.
I haven't either. I haven't. No. So it's hard for me to I don't know what this does to him. I have no idea.
We've seen guys miss multiple games with turf toe before.
Yeah. And he was limping around. He looked, he was hobbling around like he lost his walking stick on Sunday. But
I do wonder if he's kind of one weird hit away from being kind of that hobbling guy again, And so So something to consider with that as well. All right, Brett, let's what's that, Brad?
So I was going to say that's what happened last year when he dislocated his kneecap, because he was already banged up. I can't remember exactly what it was, but he had some sort of lower body injury, and then I think he went for another sneak or something, and that's when the kneecap went. So, and that's kind of what we saw on Sunday again, where you had one injury and it, the way you move or it just one seems to lead to the other. So it's definitely a non-zero chance he gets banged up further.
All right, Brett, let's get your kind of breakdown of the game here. How do you see this game, flowing? How do you see the strategy from both sides? And do you have any bets? Are you leaning any ways? And what's going on with your account?
It's an incredibly difficult cap here on Friday morning. We're assuming that Patrick Mahomes plays, and that's certainly baked into the market right now. It's at 3.5. And if we do know that Mahomes is in, it'll probably move to 4.5. And if he's out, like you said, it's going to be well north of 3 in favor of Buffalo. So that's a huge discrepancy based on one player who just happens to be the most important player in the league. I have to lean KC here. I just think they're being undervalued.
Shocker.
I know.
You've only gone against your team every single week for the last. Yeah, I know. It's shocker.
Yeah, it's really an emotional hedge. It's gone really well for me. I think they've covered 9 of the last 10, and I've been against them every single week. But it's some of that just might be it's because I'm so close to it. All season, I'm just I'm consuming news and content around this team, and it's just overload, and it sends my head in 1,000 different directions throughout the year, and I try to filter out all of it. But that's gotten me into trouble, as evidenced by the number of times that I've bet against them, and they've been the best team against the spread all season long. But yeah, I do think because KC is underperformed against the market this year, that there is value on this team. I can't even remember the last time KC covered a spread, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that they have not covered huge numbers this year. Mm-hmm. Even last week in a playoff game, they mostly dominated that game against Cleveland. They got sleepy in the red zone. They missed several opportunities there. Won the game, but again, failed to cover the spread. That's happened so many times this year. And we talk all year about teams that run above expectation and win games they don't deserve to win, which results in a really good ATS record. I don't know what to make of KC when it comes to that. They're excellent in these high leverage situations, which I talked about last week. And a lot of that has to do with coaching. Even more of it has to do with the greatness of Mahomes. And now we're finally looking at a short spread here, right on the key number. And it is extremely enticing to get KC at this price, because within the market, I see this as an opportunity to buy low on KC and sell high on Buffalo. Sell high in Buffalo again. I mean, maybe they're still being priced appropriately. I don't know, but I mean, I see this as a good buy low spot on Mahomes, assuming he is good to go. But it's really tough because we don't know. And I'm with you guys. I'm worried about the turf toe just as much as the concussion. So this is a really tough cap.
Brad, I will, to pull back the curtain here, this thing, when it started running here in Vegas, one of the shops, it ran all the way to 3.5. When it got to 3.5, that was just too much for me. I took a big piece of the Bills at 3.5. Because again, the status of Mahomes, to me, I know no matter what, he's not going to be 100%. So if you're going to give me 3.5 on the Bills with a guy that I know, at least no matter what, even if he plays, I mean, there's still the outside chance he doesn't play. And I know at least for sure there's going to be a foot injury involved here. I'm getting a less than 100% guy in this game that I expect to be pretty tightly contested, actually. And so I took the 3.5. I feel fine taking the 3.5. You and I, Brett can't do it because no mobile over there. But you and I can watch a couple of drives, right? And we can figure out if this foot thing looks worse on Patrick Mahomes than we even consider, right? I think this is an awesome in-game betting game as well, because we'll be able to see with our eyes real quick, because trust me, they'll point it out. If he's hobbling around out there, if he's limping around, they are going to let us know. And that, I think, presents an in-game opportunity for us, as if you have in-game betting in your jurisdiction.
Yep. You'll have to be quick because if the broadcasters are pointing out, then you better get on your phone quick. So yeah, I've not bet the game yet, partially because of that uncertainty. So yeah, I do think a fully healthy Mahomes. I think the line is probably 3.5 would be fair, because they do have the extra rest. Obviously, they had week 17 off. They had the bye. They played one game in the last month, really. Whereas the Bills have been, they've been going for a while now. They do have the home field fans, so I think you probably give them 2 for home field. So, you add it all together. This line is only saying the Chiefs are a point better than the Bills, and yeah, it's tough to say with a perfectly healthy Mahomes that's true, because we know just how high the upside is. So I think my favourite angle here is probably the Bills to score points. I'm looking at a team total around 24.5, 25.5, and I like them to go over that. So the reasons why: one, basically, I would say this is a top 3 offense by passing DVOA, top 5 by total DVOA. So I guess, is there any reason I don't want to bet them to go over a low team total? And the first matchup, the Chiefs did get the blitzes away. They pressured Allen on half of the snaps he faced there, so they really messed him up with blitzes. But John Feliciano, the right guard, was missing there, and his role is kind of like the center in this offense. He works out a lot of the protections, which way to slide the line to pick up the blitz. So otherwise, this line is second in pass block win rate this year, while the Chiefs are 18th in pass rush win rate. So I can see them keeping Allen pretty clean here. Now the Chiefs, they've got 2 corners on the injury report, Snead and Breland with a concussion, so he might well miss. And against a team that can go like 5 deep on the outside, I think that's a bit of a mismatch as well. And then the Chiefs also, they run a lot of man, and Allen has absolutely smashed man this year, partially because he's got all those receivers and partially he can pull it down and run. So put it all together, I think just get rid of the uncertainty about Mahomes and his toe, and just back the Bills to do what they've done literally all season long and just score points against the defense, which is it's down to 28th in defensive DVOA in the second half of the year. So it's not playing that well. It's got banged up corners. The pass rush is going up against an elite offensive line. So yeah, I really don't see why the Bills shouldn't get to 28 plus here.
Yeah, so I'm, look, I'm like I said, I'm on the Bills. I like them a lot here at 3.5, which I was able to get. If it gets back to 3.5, I might add on more. It's just it's a spot here. I like this offense to score points against this Chiefs defense. And here's the other thing for me is, if there is even a chance that Mahomes is not what he typically is. Say you get one extra drive that they don't score. Say you get, one extra drive that Mahomes isn't able to make that play or make that pass. I expect this Bills team to go to move the ball and go up and down the field. And I expect them to score. And it might be just enough for this to be tipping in the Bills' favor, because that one extra possession could mean everything to me. I'm going to have a sprinkle on the Bills' money line on this game as well. From a prop standpoint, the books have gotten just absolutely absurd on Travis Kelce at FanDuel. His receiving prop is 96.5. And look, I understand that the guy is very, very good and one of the best at it. But 100-yard receiving prop, you just auto take the under. It's just an auto fade. So, don't follow me on that one. I'm standing for my principles here. If you're going to put a 100-yard receiving prop on a tight end, I'm betting the under on that every single time. Any thoughts real quick, guys, on the total in this one? I don't think we do because of the uncertainty, right? I mean, it's just Brad, I know you said that you don't want to play the full total. You'd rather just play the Bills because, we don't really know what we're getting from the Chiefs, right? Yeah,
exactly. And I think both teams are going to sit in this cover 2 shell. So, we could just get a lot of 12 play scoring drives. And, if 2 of them go for a field goal instead of a touchdown, then you're up against it. So no play on the full game total for me.
Brett, we're with you, man. I'm going to be financially invested with you, and then I will also be emotionally invested with you. Hope your team gets there, my friend. Guys, we have the full written breakdowns over at the lines, over at the Play Picks as well. If you're listening to this on audio, head over to the YouTube page. That is youtube.com/playpicks. You can watch the videos of everything that we've done, and we'll continue to do throughout the course of the Super Bowl and the NBA season as well. For Brett, for Brad, I'm Matt. See you guys next week.